Welcome to Edinburgh Anarchist Feminist Book Fair 2021, and welcome to Words with Bite, a showcase of writing from the latest issue of Extra Teeth magazine. If you're joining us for the first time today, please take a moment to look over our Safer Spaces agreement, which is available to read on our website, and I'll post a link into the chat just after this. While you're there on the website, you can also check out the programme for the rest of the weekend and the book fair stalls as well on the stalls page. And if you want to pick up a copy of Extra Teeth, the guys from the magazine have added a code for 20% off all issues on their stall page. So if you enjoyed the reading, head over there and grab a discount. As ever, these events are made possible by people giving up their time and their labour. Any donations that we take go directly to the writers. So if you can, do consider donating via our PayPal. And again, I'll drop a link in the chat on the YouTube live stream. Finally, as well, we're also really keen to hear feedback after the event about how we can make our programming and our spaces more accessible. So if you've had thoughts that you'd like to share after the event, just drop us a line through the feedback portal on the website. I think that's all from me. I'm really excited for this. I'm looking forward to it. So I'll hand over to Jules and to Heather to introduce the readers for today.
Hello, and thank you, Fred, for that lovely intro. Yes, welcome to the Extra Teeth issue 3 showcase. I'm going to show you issue 3 here, just out on Thursday. So we're absolutely delighted. We had some delays with COVID-19, which we're going to talk about a little bit later on. But we are so happy to have this issue out in the world, and absolutely delighted to be launching it as part of Edinburgh's Anarchist Feminist Book Fair. We've got 3 readers from the new issue today. Hopefully some of you have got this at home already. And as Fred mentioned, we do have 20% off for attendees of all single issues. That includes issue 2 and 3, because we're actually sold out of issue 1, which is amazing. And also our prints, which we did around issue 2, they're risograph prints by David Lem. So those are also discountable today. So just to say a little bit about how this event is going to work, we're not going to have audience questions, but we're going to have a little bit of chat with each of our writers. And in between, my co-founder and I, Heather, Parry, and I will have a little bit of chat in between about how we found the journey to publishing this issue and a little bit about Extra Teeth. And we're also going to tell you a little bit about submissions, as I'm sure there's writers out there. We're going to be opening for submissions again on Tuesday, so more about that in a little bit. So each of our 3 readers is going to read an extract from their stories for about 10 minutes-ish. And then we're going to ask them what they're up to at the moment. Yeah, as I say, we're not going to have audience questions for this one because we've got a lot for you to pack into an hour, but we'd love to hear from you on socials, of course. We are at Extra Teeth Mag on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, but we're not really on Facebook, to be honest. You can also check out our stall, which Fred's told you a little bit about that. So I'm going to shut up and say hello to Heather. Join me.
Hello, Jules. Hello, Heather. Thank you for being the professional one who knows all the social media handles, because I absolutely don't. As Jules said, we're going to have 3 of our 12 writers today. So we have 12 writers in every issue. We usually have 9 or 10 short stories and 2 or 3 essays, depending on what comes in and what gets commissioned. So today we've got 2 readings from stories and 1 reading from an essay. So I'm going to introduce you to our first reader, Okala Elesia. So Okala says he is from Cornwall via Nigeria, yet finds himself in London writing fiction. Who amongst us hasn't had that experience? He has stories in Circus, Firefly, and the Molotov Cocktail. You can find more of his writing, including a gloomy horoscope, over at yellowholes.com. That's YELLA holes.com. And on that note, I just want to say, we put the magazines together through some commissioning and some submissions. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. But we tend to get kind of 450 to 500 submissions every issue, which, as you can imagine, is a lot to read. And we've got so few spaces compared to the amount of amazing work we have that we have to be really choosy. And Okala's story is one that kind of jumped out straight away. And when Jules and I went through our kind of like head-to-head long listing thing where we argue with each other about who we really wanted, and then we come to a short list that we've agreed on. And after that, I looked Okala up, because some submissions we get from people we know, whose work we're very familiar with, and Okala was a name that came out of nowhere for us. You know, we live in very different parts of the country. So I looked up Okala's website and I found a story called Reagan's Coming. And I just wanted to read you, the opening paragraph because I feel like today's audience will love this just as much as I did. So it's called Reagan's Coming, or Collect Calls from the Nicaraguan Dead. They say that in the final years of his presidency, with a very particular form of despondent sadness enveloping him, Ronald Reagan spent his last few days in the White House entering any room with a TV and masturbating to the point of climax onto the screen. So I think you can appreciate why I kind of fell in love with Okala's work straight away. It's exactly the kind of bold, weird, political kind of thing we love at Extra Teeth. And the piece he's going to be reading from today is called Raoul Will Answer to His Shareholders. Okala, over to you.
Oh, thank you, Heather. That was so nice. You need to send me a transcript of that so I can put it on my CV or something. Yeah, so Raoul will answer to his shareholders. I've wanted to write the story for ages because a few years ago I spent an extended amount of time in Arizona, and I was really attracted to the kind of the desert setting, how it's so set in place, but yet it feels like somewhere where things can change. It's like you have to really look at it very directly to just see like minutely how things change there. And then I had been on a trip to Vietnam like a year and a half ago, and I came back and I was feeling like totally directionless, and that's where this story comes from. So it probably doesn't seem autobiographical, but it is in many ways. Yeah, so let's get into it. I know Jules said that we can just read an extract, but my story's so short that like I'll probably finish it within 10 minutes. So like use an air horn or something if you want me to not read out the ending. Raoul will answer to his shareholders. The actor is old. The actor is tired. Arizona's sun-drenched flats have done nothing for his skin. He wanders out into the garden of Laszlo's maisonette, feeling like an intruder, even though it's been 3 weeks and Laszlo lives over in New Mexico with a house of young boys. Nothing for his skin at all. His prostate stings. His eyes pounce on every shadow. And then there is the problem with the horns. 2 shoots of thick bone have punctured his skin and now grow several inches high. At first, Kath, his agent, and Paul, his publicist, did an admirable job of fooling studios and producers they were necessary for the character. So he played a dismissive father of a rancher in love who had come to resemble his cattle, a sleepy professor in a coming-of-age tale for whom they were a manifestation of guilt. It wasn't long before people started to ask questions, though. Mostly, why does Alvaro Recoba have horns now? The many specialists and surgeons he saw were just as unhelpful. They could be operated on, but he would lose half of his skull. Well, yeah, sure, they could operate, but it'd affect the inner workings of the jaw. He spoke to psychiatrists, psychologists, and on more than one occasion, a guru in the desert who had multiple arrest warrants out for her. He received letters from fans with detailed drawings outlining how they do the procedure, if only entrusted with the matter. Finally, though never much of a religious man, the actor had visited the local Methodist church, who gave their truth to him straight, and in a fashion he'd expected. Alvaro, you have internalized something evil. What it was they couldn't say, but had he been eating right, getting his greens? He didn't go back after that. His talks with Kath and Paul became less frequent, more awkward. They faded into a single person, then that person disappeared completely. He sees on his phone that there is still the offer of work in Japan. Someone named Yasutaka wants him to play the patriarchal head of a band of Oni. The money is decent, although the numbers are in yen, so actually is it decent? The actor scans the private weeklies. Because of this business, some ads abruptly close with the words NEB, no extra bone, in block capitals. All this effort for one man. Those sons of bitches. End scene. The actor is angry. The actor is sad. In Arizona, it gets so hot you can peel off your sweat and lay it out in the sun. The garden is littered with saline copies of the actor, most of whom do very little other than clutch at their chests or struggle towards him. He sits there wallowing in this heat with the lining of his tennis shorts entrenched deep within the cavity of his ass, watching the heat lines of the desert reconstitute her shape at intervals barely visible to the naked eye, hoping in the back of his mind that somehow one of these copies might elicit words from its salty larynx and hand him a plan. When they don't, he wonders if perhaps there are parasites in his body that seasoned the soup of his DNA, causing the horns to sprout. Maybe they want him to fuck a goat, change hosts. That's what Kath once said when they were still talking. Well, there'll be a long time waiting, he told her, because Wakoba don't do like that. He sits till his ass begins to ache and then goes inside. On the TV, Entertainment Tonight is speaking on a story about gigantic moths terrorizing a movie set. The actor laughs because, honestly, wouldn't it have been better to grow wings? Anyway, as the story goes, these moths were unusually large, as big as people. At first, there was a kind of accord between all parties, but something happened, and the studio reneged and sent in exterminators. None came back, not one. Running out of time and under pressure from producers, the director himself, Jimmy Galtieri, went in, and it was quite reasonably assumed the same fate had befallen him. However, Galtieri returned several days later, having come to see the moth's way of life. The director renounced Hollywood, is expecting a child with someone in the nest, and now pickets his own picture, while the film remains on hiatus. Nobody is sure what became of the exterminators, but it's thought they were fed to their young. The actor laughs again because, honestly, do grubs even have eyes? He constructs a letter in his head to the moths. It says, "Take me, please take me. I have lost everything, and possibly I'm ugly now." In his head, they write back, "What could you possibly offer us then? The dramatic pause?" So that's that then, dramatic pause. The actor is hungry. The actor is frozen in the headlights of history. He senses time is passing tenfold. Where once he slept for hours, now he sleeps for weeks. The wrinkles that he possessed, and there were many, have smoothed into a single plateau. He calls Yasutaka's people and learns through his daughter in piecemeal English that the film wrapped up years ago and was a commercial bomb. In fact, that's why she's answering her father's phone when really she'd prefer to be in Europe. "Well, this world is tough," he says. "And do you folks have a cure for horns?" The line goes dead. He shakes a leak from his ailing groin, collects the night's pizza from the porch. He regrets that he has lost his appetite for books, for hard drugs, sex, and people too. The actor spends the evening in front of the TV, flicking V's at whoever wants them. Men, women, children. They don't know it yet, but their orbits too will someday veer off course into an approaching sun. "Television is base," he yells, hurling pizza at the screen. Though not as base as the late night chat show format he remembers. He pulls one out for the perfectly coiffed embers of tomorrow's stars, seeing suddenly the light of their cosmos reflected in the surface heat of one of his many wretched ready meals, now frozen, now wet, now 20 seconds from dead. The life of a desert, it could be said. One night, the actor takes a call from some kid called Raoul, who tells him Laszlo passed away in his sleep, leaving Raoul, his last great lover, everything. The kid doesn't know what he'll do with the money. He's never had any before. Probably he'll buy a cat sanctuary somewhere along the Bay of Montevideo. He speaks at length about his dream in a gentle, honeyed voice. The cats will have a percentage stake in the business, and their cats after them. Good for PR, the boy says. Stay in the desert, sweet Buffalo Man. The house is yours as long as you need it. Buffalo Man, the actor thinks, piss boiling with indignant fury. I'm the great Alvaro Recoba. Have fun in Montevideo with the cats that will eat your liver the first chance they get. Of course, that's not what he says. Instead, he tells Raoul thank you and commiserations, and they never do speak again. That evening, he cries for the first time since Luna went. Sweet Luna, the rescue hen who laid no eggs. When he and Casey, his lodger at the time, buried her, they were both so drunk, she went in upside down. The weeks that follow this call move formlessly. Summer comes, and the days sit a little longer in the sky. This means the salt in the saline copies dry out faster, and they have stronger skeletons as a result. Occasionally, the actor will hear the gate go and see one stagger into the desert before it collapses and disintegrates. He has those who stay carry him to different spots in the garden. They buckle under his weight, bending like high grass in a breeze. On this particular night, he turns in for another long sleep. How long will it be this time? 1 month? A year? Longer? The nearby call of coyotes, and behind that, the shudder of something vast slowly turning. The actor is present. The actor isn't shot. He feels now the flutter of his heart, the weight of the thing. He steps outside in his dressing gown, in his slippers, catching his reflection in the patio window by the light of the moon. Afro finned around a widow's peak. His horns are deep, polished slate silver. His eyes are drawn to the early morning wind, still lifting the previous day's copies up, up, up in a granular swirl till they disappear from sight. He doesn't usually wonder where they go, but this morning he allows himself a moment. He studies what little he can see of the hills. There's the jutting shelf, that's always been there. Further down, the sandstone flats that under the sun seem to level off and disappear. A gust of cool air sweeps across the plain. New hills in the dark, or maybe just the old ones. He feels as though he has looked backwards so long, back has moved someplace else, and perhaps it has. He scratches his chin, tugs at his horns, an uncertain step forward, another. He sees the gravel road the rangers use, presently a mountain path of tiny fissures extending into the heart of the desert and beyond. If not now, when? He kicks his slippers to the ground, drags his front foot forwards and back. He angles his head to the side, looking out at the path. One more step, still moving. The end.
Okala, thank you so much for that beautiful reading. And what a treat that we get the whole short story as well. That was perfect. Thank you so much. And I'm just going to, you might have noticed just from the mention of giant moths that this that served as inspiration for the front cover of this issue. And I'm not going to show you all the illustrations from Okala's story, but I will show you what our guest illustrator, Ryuka Tamura, did with the moths, which is just lovely. And the neon doesn't quite come up on the screen, but I promise you, in print, it is a treat. So if you don't have a copy, I would, of course, encourage you to grab one. Thank you so much. That was such a beautiful reading. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're working on just now, Okala?
Yeah, I mean, I'm constantly writing. So this story kind of inspired the idea of a collection, and the collection is based around some of the events that I mentioned, so like the moths and the TV set being terrorized. So basically, that is the central point of all of the short stories in this collection I'm working on. And it's just about how legends grow and expand. So in a separate story, you meet the exterminators who went into the movie set, and they weren't exterminated. They basically get pulled into like the power politics of the film studio and things like that. So that's what I'm working on. I have some things in the pipeline that I'm not technically able to speak about, but hopefully I will be able to in due course. So yeah, just writing. I'm super happy that libraries are open again so that I feel I can go out, because I work at home like a lot of people. So it's nice to be able to, yeah, have a desk somewhere else.
That's wonderful. I've rarely seen the small square that is Heather Parry at the moment eyes light up quite as vociferously as when you were talking about your short story collection there.
I can't wait to read it.
I don't think any of us can, and can't wait until we can hear more details about your other projects. That sounds so brilliant. Thank you so much for joining us today, Okala.
Thank you for offering, for letting me. And also, can I just say that story? I know I was kind of like on a bummer note at the start, but the story is about like moving forward. So just finding a way, like kind of not romanticizing the past, or keep romanticizing it, but just keep moving forward. Because yeah, that's how you get anywhere, isn't it?
Yeah, thank you for that. I think that leads us quite nicely into a little chat segment, Heather, because I think that's something that has felt at times like we've really wanted to move forwards with things, and then other times it's felt really hard to do with publishing the magazine. And we definitely found that with the road to issue 3, didn't we? Shall we talk a little bit about that, Heather?
Yes, let's, Jules. Yeah, so we started working on this. When would it have been? I'm trying to think when our previous issues came out now.
It was issue 2 was supposed to be May last year, so this time last year. And then we published it in August. And then issue 3 was supposed to be out February, and we pushed it back to May. So actually, where we're supposed to be in the schedule is that I think we're supposed to be at kind of issue 5 by now, right?
Yeah, or in issue 4 in August maybe, but that will be Yes, so we had to, because of lockdown, we had to push both of our issues back. A really important thing to us at Extra Teeth is working with our local community and working with our beautiful indie bookshops that we love so much up and down the country. And we really wanted to support them, and obviously when everyone's forced to close, that made it difficult for us to kind of feel like we were doing everything we can. So in delaying the magazine, but we could give bookshops more of a chance to get them on their shelves. And it has been tough, hasn't it? But it has given us more time to get to know both of our issue 2 and issue 3 illustrators, David Lem and Ryoko Tamura, who we are in love with, kind of like probably cloyingly adoring of. Like Ryoko is based in Edinburgh, as is David, but I still haven't met her. Jules, you met her last week for the first time, is that right?
Yeah, and it's the first time when I was sitting with Ryoko outside Custom Lane in Leith. That was the first time either of us had ever seen a baby pigeon. We literally saw a baby pigeon in a nest. It was a very notable meeting. Yeah, she's great, and yeah, David as well. I think I think all 3 of our illustrators, we're really good friends of the magazine now, and I can't imagine us never sort of being in touch with them and wanting to sort of keep sharing their work on our social media and that kind of thing. And we're so lucky to have 3 such amazing artists to start with who have brought such different visions and experience to the magazine. And I think looking at all 3 of them together just feels really special. And we're just saying just before we went live that we're at this point where issue 3 is out there in the world, the subscribers and pre-orders and stockists have all got their copies, and it's just this sort of nice time where we can just kind of sit back and just kind of go, yeah, we did it, we facilitated this thing, it's cool.
Get the social media pictures of everyone's beautiful layout. They always make great pictures of their issue in front of a beautiful vista, and I really love it. I should also say that our issue 1 illustrator was the brilliant Maria Stoyan, who we love very much. But if you didn't get issue 1, you can't now, I'm afraid, because it's sold out. There might be some in bookshops, might be some still in bookshops, but unfortunately, it's gone, which is good for us.
Yeah, and we do have an illustrator confirmed for issue 4, who we're really excited about, which we will hopefully be making a public announcement about very soon, but we're going to keep stum just now. Okay, Heather, shall we move on to our second reading of the day? And we'll have a bit more chat later on.
It is my absolute pleasure to introduce our second reader for today, Anahit Behrooz. Anahit is an arts journalist based in Edinburgh. She currently works as events editor at The Skinny, another magazine who we love, with words in Map magazine, Girls on Top, and Club des Femmes. My French is terrible. I hope that's a good pronunciation. She likes beautiful films about women, old bookshops, and Dan Levy's eyebrows. Who doesn't? Anahit was one of the people we commissioned for issue 3 because Jules and I have long been fans of the way she writes about culture. So the essays that we have in Extra Teeth, we never ask people to write about a particular thing. It's the same with the stories. We never give people a theme. We never ask people to write in any particular way. We want to publish what writers want to write. And we've kind of ended up usually with like what I would consider like a cultural essay. So in our first issue, we had the brilliant Dave Coates writing about video games and poetry, comparing Super Mario to Seamus Heaney, which I think may be the first time that has ever appeared in print, that particular comparison. The second one, we had Jamie Redgate writing about Catherine Dunn and Ruth Ezeki, which was brilliant. And this issue, we've got Anahit writing about Little Women. And it's just such a beautiful essay. You'll find out when she reads to you now, but it's one of those that perhaps, I mean, I think even if you've not seen or read Little Women, it will speak to you so much. And it was just kind of heartbreakingly beautiful from the minute we read it. And I'm so, so glad we get to publish it. So Anahit, I will pass it over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being so lovely. And I'm very honored to be reading with Okala and Helen because I just love their stories so much. So yeah, I'm going to read from the middle bit because I love chaos. So if you would like to read the beginning and the end, please buy the magazine. But yeah, okay. So it came to a head in a cinema last winter, sitting urgently in front of Greta Gerwig's Little Women. Towards the end of the film, as Jo marches left to cope with the death of her sister Beth, the loss of her best friend, and her accumulating isolation, she turns to her mother for advice. Women, they have minds and they have souls as well as just hearts. And they've got ambition and they've got talent as well as just beauty, she says with increasing despair. I'm so sick of people saying that love is just all a woman is fit for. I'm so sick of it. The trailer, which I had watched obsessively a dozen times before, had stopped there. But on screen, Jo took a breath, a desperate smile emerging through her tears. But I'm so lonely. Little Women has probably always been my favorite book, but for a long time I have been embarrassed to admit it. It is maybe too childish, too girlish, too prissy, too sweet. It took Greta Gerwig to do what I had never been able to do, expose a story that is all about loss, change, and loneliness. I did not think my 20s would be marked so heavily by loss. Friendships that dwindled or moved away. Heartbreaks I've spent years clutching the shards of in my hands. I feel I'm living my life constantly in the presence of these shadows, haunted by the hazy, smudged skeletons of everything that came before and then suddenly stopped. I did not know that I would find in this children's novel, which I loved so deeply, the correlate to this loss. But it turns out it was always there. In her essay, Pure Heroines, Gia Tolentino explores the contrasting way female protagonists are depicted in children's and adult literature. If you were a girl and you were imagining your life through literature, Tolentino argues, you would go from innocence in childhood to sadness in adolescence to bitterness in adulthood, at which point, if you hadn't killed yourself already, you would simply disappear. The grown-up March sisters are not the Anna Kareninas or Emma Bovarys or Esther Greenwoods that Tolentino points to. Alcott never ties ambition and happiness entirely to youth. She understood and loved women too well for that. But certainly there is something that shifts between the two halves of Little Women, the childhood half and the adulthood half, a change of mood that articulates exactly the sense of unshakable, melancholy grief, the constant agitation that has defined the last few years of my life. The threat of loneliness, latent throughout the first half, is fully realized in the second. And so I reached deep into the recesses of this familiar book and its film for my own correlates. I find them in Jo, every writerly woman's fictional alter ego, whose loneliness is not only precipitated by the very real death of one sister, but the slow erosion of her other relationships by the tectonic movements and structures that adulthood threatens and entrenches. Her closest sister Meg married and moved away, her best friend Laurie in love and proposing a marriage that Jo knows would suffocate them both. Because loneliness is, of course, structural, formed and fostered by the ways in which we are conditioned to recognize and accept and experience intimacy. Lauren Berlant explains that desires for intimacy that bypass the couple or the life narrative it generates have no alternative plots, let alone few laws and stable spaces of culture in which to clarify and to cultivate them. What happens to the energy of attachment when it has no designated space, she asks, to the glances, gestures, encounters, collaborations, or fantasies that have no canon? For Jo, who has always resisted the conventions of gender that would socially, economically, and emotionally limit her desires, and who would have stayed single at the end of the novel if Alcott, rather than her publisher, had had the final say, there is loneliness on the other side of this resistance, a resistance that hadn't mattered in young adulthood, and then suddenly did. Adulthood is always looming, Tolentino writes, which means marriage and children, which means in effect, the end. And then there is Laurie, the fifth March sister, the forever boy next door. Although I am, in some ways, a writerly woman, I don't think I am most like Jo. I think I am like Laurie, with his fervent need to be liked, his burning desire to belong, his hopeless, unrequited love for all the wrong people. Laurie, whose solitary, hungry look went straight to Jo's warm heart when they first met. who she recognizes at the start of their friendship as sick and lonely. Laurie, who might not be a woman, but is still caught in the push and pull of gendered expectations, expected to put his music and creativity aside, to go into business, to marry and settle down, and lead a normal, contained life. For me, one of the central losses of the adult half of Little Women, almost as much as Beth's death itself, is the fragmentation of Jo and Laurie's relationship, caught up in disappointed love and the unmooring that follows. Gerwig, with her interlayering of past and present, shows it through aching juxtaposition, intimacy morphing abruptly into solitude and depression. But Alcott shows it through sheer, unbearable separation, pages and pages, almost half of the second volume, of no words exchanged and no togetherness. Gerwig makes the heartache immediate. Alcott shows it in all its agonizing, protracted nature. It is, either way, a state redolent with irretrievable loss. Parting after the proposal, the enormity of it hits Jo as she realizes that the boy Laurie would never come again. It is a line that has always disturbed and distressed me over the 20 years I have read and reread this book. I edge towards it cautiously, dreading what it means, yet almost longing for a glimpse to inoculate myself against the impending pain. Laurie and Jo's relationship never returns to what it is, or what it was. Isn't that partly what loneliness is anyway? An ache for your past self? I miss everything Jo tells Beth in the film, her voice trembling. I think I do too. I don't think the message of Little Women is that adulthood is void of ambition or replete with bitterness. But I do think Alcott, Gerwig, and Tolentino, and me too, are all preoccupied by the same anxiety, that there are socially and culturally very few ways to imagine women as grown-up, intimate, and happy. In an interview with Film Comment, Gerwig expanded on her restructuring of the film's chronology, saying, "In my experience of a lot of fiction about women, there's a sense that all the adventures happen when you're a girl or a teenager. And as soon as you become an adult, it's all over and it's not that interesting. And I cannot have that be the story we're telling young women." Over 100 years before Tolentino wrote the masterful Pure Heroines, Alcott was reckoning with the ways in which women have been taught to understand adulthood, particularly marriageable adulthood, as a chasm, and the acute loneliness that arises out of the various losses that scaffold our coming of age. Read this way, Little Women becomes about the anxiety of this impending loss, the simultaneous fear and desperate hope for a future that is often, as Berlant termed it, unimaginable outside of the narrow paths laid out before us. The ways in which everything is fragile and ephemeral, on the brink of happening and collapse all at once. Alcott, and Gerwig after her, understood that it was both. The cliff edge anticipation of it all fading away and being left at the end of it with maybe something new, or maybe with nothing at all. We'll stop there.
Anahit, I can't leave it there when I've got a frog in my throat, and I'm sure I'm not the only one. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that beautiful reading and for your beautiful reading of Little Women. That was from Intimacy Without Canon, Loneliness, Adulthood, and Little Women. And there's not an illustration for the essays, but I just love this spread. It's one of my favorite spreads in the whole magazine, actually. I just think it's so yellow. So Anahit, can you tell us a little bit about what you're working on just now? Are you writing more essays, or are you coming forward to fiction?
So, well, I haven't forayed into fiction since I was 14 on fanfiction.net. So I think that's maybe a thing that's safely left in the past. Like, as you guys know, I do mostly like kind of arts journalism. So I obviously have stuff like that coming out like most months. I think at the end of this, I talk about how I had like imagined it kind of incorporating at some point, like more books and more films, and to kind of create this roadmap. I think I would quite like to do that at some point, not just about loneliness. I think I am really interested in the ways that we kind of socially construct intimacy for women and the ways that that is often lacking, especially like female friendship, the like complete absence of language that we have around that. So I'd really like to kind of look at some of the books and films that have like been really important to me and maybe carry this on. But that's like a 2 a.m. thought. It is not currently happening, but I would really like to at some point, I think.
That sounds fantastic. We are very eager to read whatever you've got coming up next. And thank you so much for joining us with that absolutely gorgeous reading. I think we're being told there's lots and lots of love on the YouTube live chat. So thank you so much, Anahit. We'll speak to you soon. You okay, Heather?
I've got actual goosebumps. It's so powerful on the page, but this is my first time hearing Anahit read it herself, and yeah, it's got a whole different kind of power. I'm sure, like everyone else, I was like on the verge of tears at points. So thank you, Anahit.
And Fred's saying that people want the fan fiction as well, so we're going to need to make this happen.
Is it a good time? Oh, hello. Is it a good time for us to talk about our submissions process?
Yeah, let's do it, because we are opening for submissions once again on the 1st of June, which I believe is Tuesday, which is coming towards us very, very quickly. We got 500. No, we got 500 submissions last time, and as you mentioned a little bit earlier, with only 12 places, that's it's quite intense reading, basically, isn't it?
It is, but it's, you know, is there a better way to live life than intensely reading? And we always say that we're a Scottish magazine with an international outlook. So we're very kind of open to an interpretation of what Scottish means, but we also don't only publish Scottish writing. We want to publish the best that anyone can give us, really, and work that really fits in with our ethos. And basically, we want really bold writing that is about anything. It will just jump out at us when it's right. And as I said, we don't have a theme, so you can tell there's anything. Most of our pieces are between 800 and 4,000 words, though we do have, well, quite a lot of leeway, depending on the other pieces in the magazine. So we've had some longer pieces, we've had some very much on the short side. And shall I say how much we pay and what our conditions are, Jules?
Absolutely, we're all about that transparency life.
Yes, so we pay £100 for every piece that we publish, and we pay on acceptance. So we pay after the editing process. You know, we have a very, I hope, accessible and friendly editing process between usually myself and the writers, just to bring the very best out of the work. And we pay when that's all done and dusted, so you don't have to wait until publication, because why would we do that? So you get £100, and you get 2 copies of the magazine as well, and you then get to be part of the little community that springs up around each issue and the magazine as a whole. We call it Team Teeth, and the team is getting bigger and bigger every year. And when I mentioned the mentorship as well, Jules.
Yeah, very excitingly, we are adding in writing mentorships for the first time. There's been a couple of people you've taken under your wing in a more kind of ad hoc sense, Heather, but we've decided to formalise the process a little bit. So if you choose to submit to Extra Teeth, you will be able to also register your interest for being mentored by the one and only Heather Parry. So Heather, can you tell us a little bit about what you might be looking for from potential mentees? Let's call
manatees. So having been a manatee myself, I know how useful and productive that can be for a writer who's a little bit further back in their career. I was mentored myself by a little unknown called Kirsty Logan way back at the start of my writing career. And it really did make all the difference. And as you mentioned, we've kind of offered this to some of our writers before, people usually who send work in, and we see a lot of promise with it. Usually they're very much at the start of their career. And then I have a few 2 or 3 meetings with them. We workshop some of their work. So yeah, if their work has showed great promise but just not made it into the magazine, we just reach out and say, is there anything we can do to help you? What would be the best process for you? And how can we kind of shove you along a little bit on the sometimes difficult road of fiction writing? So yeah, we're happy to be bringing that into the formal side of Extra Teeth.
Absolutely, it's going to be super formal. There's going to be sort of evening attire and everything, I hope. So if you want to hear more about that, our submissions page will be going live on Tuesday. So do check it out and we'll have some info there for you as well. And if you've got any questions, we are always happy to hear from you. Okay, time is racing on. Gosh, this is going so fast, isn't it? Heather, you've got to introduce our last writer now.
Yes, so our third writer of the day is the brilliant Helen McClory, who was raised between the Isle of Skye and Edinburgh, where she currently lives. Her first story collection, On the Edges of Vision, won the Saltire First Book of the Year prize in 2015. Her second, Mayhem and Death, was written for The Lonely and published in 2018. The Goldblum Variations, a collection of microfictions about Jeff Goldblum, is a difficult name to say. It came out in October 2019, and she's just released a new novel, very excitingly, called Bitterhall. There is a moor and a cold sea in her heart. And I have to say, Helen is one of the people that I was so excited when her name popped up in our submissions inbox, because I've been a fan of Helen since, I think, before I moved to Scotland. So before 2015. I know it feels like I've been here forever now. And I always call her the kind of queen of the sentence, because I'm so in awe of what she does on a line level with her work, especially. It's just like, these things stick in my head and I can remember them for years after. So I was so excited when she sent this story, which is called The 16th Directive. And we were really wary of issue 3 becoming like the lockdown issue, because I don't think anyone wants to read about how bleak and sad it's been. But I'm very interested in how weird everyone feels right now. And we did have a kind of dystopian, otherworldly feel to issue 3, especially with Ross McCleary's piece, Can I Have a Word? And Helen's piece, The 16th Directive. So I'm so excited for you to hear it.
Thank you, Heather. So this one was written after my last trip out of the country before lockdown. I got stuck in Dubai airport for 15 hours. And I don't know if you've ever been there, but it is a dystopic place. It's so, fancy, wealthy. There's on the surface everything you can need, but really it's only if you want expensive jewelry and a very limited menu of food and no bathrooms. So I started writing this under lockdown, and I think, that feeling of being stuck coming from both directions has really made it quite a strange piece. It's quite long, so I'm just going to read until I stop, basically. I was waiting at the airport for an onward flight when I read that the 16th Directive was initiated. My initial response was dismay. The 15th Directive had been announced just 2 days prior and concerned the treatment of spies. Spies from all countries were declared exposed. Duly, they were extracted from their various locations and brought to an airport, perhaps the one I was waiting in. That information was not made public. Lined up against one of the wall-length windows, and had first their ears removed, then their lips, then the fingers on their writing hands cut off with bolt cutters. Finally, their eyes were put out. This was done alphabetically by surname, so that no one spy or country would feel especially penalized. The purported purpose of the directive was to promote global unity by highlighting the instruments of treachery, the ears that listened, the lips that spoke, the fingers that wrote, the eyes that witnessed all, both the secrets of the conglomerates and the high-ranking individuals, and the punishments enacted for passing on those secrets. The airport I was in was one of those used to contain and help transmit large volumes of global consumers from business to business. It had the huge concave wall-length windows, tinted to protect the eyes from the harsh desert sun and decorated with elegant cross-hatching to mimic the local culture in an ideally vague manner. It had the long automatic walkways under the long arching glass roofs, also tinted. There were the shops in the central interior, accessible from the aisles on either side. There were the many rooms useful for conference and the uprooting of connivance. Stationary scanners were posted before the gates and along the walkways. A glossy subway system looped under each of the 17 terminuses, and served in the minds of consumers as the guts of the structure. It had, in short, all modern conveniences required, but if a criticism could be made, it was that conveniences of the kind that cater to physical comfort were in less obvious supply. When the initiation of the 16th directive was announced, I had been waiting in the airport for several days for my flight and had located only a single cafe for refreshment. The cafe was tucked under a large escalator, once providing access to the lounges, which were not in operation due to the actions and guidance of earlier directives. For eating, the cafe sold poached dough balls with a choice of white or grey sauce, or salad bowl consisting of a layer of aging leaves and a boiled egg. I had eaten all three options and could not recommend any of them in strong terms. To drink, coffee was available, without milk, or with milk, the equivalent of several pounds extra, though that was to be expected. The snack was a kilo bag of candy-coated almond chocolates, which I found to be quite sweet to my taste, and which caused bleeding in the gums and lesions on the surface of the tongue. One would only have to eat a handful before further scorbutic symptoms began appearing. The taste was not worth the bruising or fogginess of the mind, though I had less to do with my mind at that time, in any case. The cleanest and therefore most comfortable showers had been located in the lounges. The rest were limited to a single block in Terminal Sh. As queues, identified as one of the commonest forms of human gathering, were discouraged, there were none. A ticketing system via phone ensured that one shower per week of stay was provided gratis. My ticket number had yet to be reached, but the hygiene issue was surmounted through the use of cloths packed in the small roller suitcase that served as my hand luggage. A bar of spring water soap brought along as a gift for the hosts in my country of destination was easily repurposed. For the brushing of teeth, there was a small kit supplied on the first flight. The kit was thoughtfully provisioned with 3 extra toothpaste tubes in anticipation of the expected delays to onward travel. The size of the toothpaste tubes conformed by a wide margin to the standard limits on liquids imposed for every flight. The amount of toothpaste in each tube was only 5 ml. Accordingly, the toothpaste required careful rationing. As to other forms of cleanliness and self-presentation, such as makeup or a larger choice of outfits, the character of the journey suggested they be set aside, and others around me had taken this course for themselves as well. One is prepared for a few inconveniences in the current climate, and can, with some forward planning, adapt with relative ease to many of these. But as the corporations are aware, one can only briefly dissuade certain deep-rooted biological requirements. When darkness falls, as it does, the body naturally slows according to its innate circadian rhythms. Sleep, when traveling, is a cumbersome need. Thankfully, as you are likely aware, allocated teams from across the world have at last brought together their years of research and have presented a solution: twilight recliners. I am by nature a cautious person, so the twilight recliners located in Terminal Thorn did not immediately appeal. I was, I admit, apprehensive as to the possible side effects. On the first night, I sought out a low-tech chair, and not finding one free, crouched against a closed shop front, and that the slow and continuous passage of people under the high lamps lining the aisle soothed my tired mind. The second night I required oblivion, which the recliner provided for the duration of 7 hours and a reasonable fee, considering. In the morning, I had only the small pain in the base of my neck at the site of entry, and was otherwise gratefully refreshed. Diversions by which to while away the waiting time were limited. I had finished my book 2 days previously, on the day of the 15th directive, and had been seeking new reading materials since then. It seemed that the bookshop, which had been in Terminal Gamma when I had last been at the airport, had been permanently shut down due to an outbreak of the usual disease, and I had not worked out which of the other 16 terminals, all initialed after international high-ranking officials, might contain another. I had asked 2 information technicians for their advice on the matter. They had looked at me without interest, which was quite to be expected given their condition. When the 16th directive was announced, I was in the shameful process of becoming irate with the second of the 2 technicians. In my defence, I hadn't slept on a bed in 4 days, and I hadn't a book to resort to in order to dream. "Don't you know what I am?" I asked. They most definitely knew, if they could be said to know anything. I am, amongst my other professions, a writer, which by extension means I am a reader. Since not everyone can or is permitted to or has the will to engage in reading, there is a need for the services of readers or the indulgence, depending on the perspective. I am aware that this is commonly known, but this is what I was saying as I spoke to the technician. What I was thinking, perhaps even the scanners positioned above the technician desks could not fully process. It is a habit of those of my class, subclass to be precise, to think in words after all. One word being quite deceptively similar to another in sound or form. A simple sentence being harder to parse than an image, even if written on a page and not in the barely perceptible screen inside of a mind. And one might additionally choose to think an incorrect word, something that might make it all the harder for the allegory to fully interpret meaning. For instance, allegory for algorithm. The technician was not responsive to my vocal articulations in the ways I would have liked. In my pocket, my phone buzzed sharply, causing me to cry out in a small, undignified way. Sensitivity to noise is one of the side effects of these silent recliners, and of scurvy, as a side note. The alert text informed me that the 16th directive was initiated, and that, as a registered member of the Artisans and Crafters class, I must present myself immediately to the relevant authority or class administrator to facilitate the rendering process. After a brief consultation of the terminal map, I pulled out the handle of my rolling case and walked towards security.
Helen, thank you so much. I really recommend that all of you pick up from where she left off the rest of the story, because it's just fantastic. We're so pleased to have had this reading from you. Thank you so much for joining us today. And can you tell us, we're running out of time, but could you tell us a little bit about what you're working on just now?
Yes, I'm actually working with 2 other writers to create a treatment for a TV show.
Ooh.
Yes, with a major production company, but it's not clear whether it'll go ahead, but it's quite a creepy story set in Scotland. That's all I can say at the moment.
This sounds amazing, and all of our fingers are crossed for this, I think, collectively at this very moment. Thank you so much for that reading and for joining us. Thank you to all 3 of our readers, actually. We will need to wrap up there. I'll just show a very quick spread. This is Ryoko's work on 16th Directive. And I think we've all just been blown away by her, by our guest illustrator's range of style and her creativity and flair. We're very, very grateful. And for the wonderful design of Esther Clayton, who has been as part of Team Teeth since the very beginning. So shout out to Esther there if you're watching today. So I can't believe we're at the end of this event. I feel like we've got so much more to chat about, but thank you so much. Let's keep the conversation going on social media. Please do check out our stall at Edinburgh's Anarchist Feminist Book Fair. Make sure you watch more events. Make sure you donate if you can. What a treat it's been to spend our Saturday afternoon with you. So it's goodbye from me, Jules, and it's goodbye from Heather. Do you want to say a quick goodbye, Heather?
Goodbye. Sorry to end on that bombshell from Helen. Really want to know more about it. But yeah, thank you, Anahit, Okala, and Helen today. You've been amazing. What a great combination of readings as well. And yeah, thank you to the book fair so much for having us.
Thank you so much, Fred, Abby, and everyone else involved. It's been an absolute delight. And now we do the awkward waving thing until the live stream ends. Goodbye.